Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 3 Degrees podcast. I'm David Thorson. I would like to welcome my co-hosts, Chris Gloninger and Channing Dutton. We have a wonderful guest today. It's going to be a very interesting discussion on the climate issue. And if you like what we're doing here, please look for us on Substack, Spotify, YouTube, like us, repost, subscribe, whatever you can do to support this podcast. And I'll hand it off now for an introduction of our guest.
Yeah, David. And we obviously focus for the Iowa Writers Collaborative on environment, weather, and climate on this podcast. And as we head into some very critical elections around the country, especially in Iowa, we want to give a platform to some of those candidates to reach a wider audience for those that subscribe. And the Senate race against Joni Ernst, prior to this comment, I think was really pretty much, it seemed like a lock. But I want to play a couple of videos on the senator. The first one is this, that obviously drove a lot of issues.
People are not, well, we all are going to die. So, for heaven's sakes.
I mean, if that is her question or her response for what happens to people and people's health care, what is her response going to be for climate change? Obviously, she's done nothing when it comes to the environment, to water, to climate. But what's even worse, I'd argue, is her apology, her half-assed apology that was done at a cemetery. And this is the apology.
Hello, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement that I made yesterday at my town hall. I was in the process of answering a question that had been asked by an audience member when a woman who was extremely distraught screamed out from the back corner of the auditorium, "People are going to die." And
whoever is her aide and runs her campaign, runs her day-to-day activities, should never have a job in politics again, because if you send your senator that you're working for to send this apology at a cemetery when he basically said everyone is going to die, I don't know if you have a career in politics after that. And hopefully she doesn't have a career in politics. And we have a guest today who is going to be taking her on, hopefully, in the next election cycle. He's obviously big in Iowa politics. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Zach Wahls. Zach, thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Channing for the first question.
It's a real honor to have Zach Wahls with us. Many people know that Zach burst onto the national consciousness talking about the importance of family, talking about his parents, his sister, and the life that he's led. And it's great that we start with that clip, because when I watch Senator Ernst talking, I think, wow, who raised that girl? Something is really out of control when she thinks she can resort to sarcasm in an apology for dumb comments. And, Senator Wahls, you're here with us. Why don't you give us your initial response just to the two videos that we've run, because it's going to come up.
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, Channing, David, Chris, it's wonderful to be with all of you here this fine afternoon. I appreciate you guys having me on for the conversation today. When I saw that clip, I was shocked. Obviously, it was the kind of first reaction. And when you did, I'm glad you played the second follow-up clip too, because I think both of those clips individually, but then even more so when you see them back to back and taken together, they just show that Senator Ernst has completely lost touch with the constituents here in Iowa and the voters who sent her to Washington, D.C. to represent us. I didn't vote for her in 2014 or in 2020 for that matter. But I think when she ran initially, we probably all remember that viral campaign ad that she put out there talking about how she's going to go to Washington and make them squeal. And I think there was some hope that, not dissimilar from Chuck Grassley in his earlier years, that she would be willing to be more of an independent-minded Republican that would really represent what's best for Iowa and in our state. And in the last 12 years that she's been out in Washington, D.C., I think it has become crystal clear, and that clip puts it on full display, that Joni Ernst has not changed Washington. Washington has changed Joni Ernst. You can't tell me that you are in touch with your constituents when you are not just kind of out of hand dismissing their concerns. And what that question was about the impact of cuts to Medicaid, which is going to have devastating impacts here in Iowa, and specifically is threatening the operation of Joni's hometown hospital in Montgomery County, Iowa. Montgomery County Memorial is one of the several Iowa hospitals that's being put at risk for closure because of these cuts. But then to put out this video where she sarcastically says that she sincerely apologizes. I mean, just a totally bizarre thing to do, and I think just shows the lack of regard that she has for people here. And I think that vote that she had for that so-called big beautiful bill just really shows that she's putting her party politics before what's actually best for our state.
Yeah, thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. I know that you have a young child, and I happen to have 5 grandchildren that are under the age of 7 with 1 2 months. So my 2-month-old granddaughter will be 75 years old in the year 2100. And we often talk about on this program, if we just leave things unchecked and status quo going forward with our environment, with our climate, what this world is going to look like in 2100 or a few generations down. Tell me what your feelings are with a young child about how you might want to approach moving us forward into a better, cleaner energy future kind of for your child.
Well, look, David, I mean, I'll tell you, I hope that I'm around in 2100 too, but you're absolutely right. My son, Eli, was born last year, and he's turning 16 months here on Thursday. It's just been completely transformative, for anyone who has a child. I'm sure that they can connect to the feelings that you feel for the first time. It's just been the best thing to happen in my life. And it certainly puts, sharper focus on the future and the kind of state, the kind of world that Eli is going to grow up in. And he calls, well, eventually, once he gets the word home, he's not quite there yet, but once he gets that, the kind of world that he'll call home. And, look, I'll say that for me, I grew up in the Scouts. I know a lot of Iowa kids are 4-H kids. My mom was a 4-H girl growing up, but I remember, joining the Scouts at a very early age. I was a Tiger Cub, all the way up to, I've actually got my Eagle Scout award here hanging in my office. And, one of the things that you learn in scouting is that you need to leave the campsite better than you found it. It's a really simple idea, but obviously it's not always easy to do. And I think it was that connection to sustainability and in the future that attracted me when I gave that speech that Channing alluded to in the introduction. I was a sophomore at the University of Iowa, where I was studying civil and environmental engineering, planning to go work in that field, where I was hoping to do a combination, whether it was physical infrastructure projects or supporting work that goes into things like Iowa's wind farms. I thought I wanted to make I wanted to make a direct contribution in that field, because I knew it would be a way to make our state and world a better place. When the video of that speech to the legislature about growing up in a non-traditional family went viral, obviously my work went in a different direction and has brought me to where we are today. But that's certainly something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And to your point, you think about it in a new light when you have a little one.
I know that you were subject, because of being from a non-traditional family, a lot of bullying. And yeah. I think that what the Trump administration has done, and I witnessed it firsthand coming to Iowa, talking about climate change on the news, that is their first reaction when someone isn't like them, right? Is to bully, because I think they may feel threatened. They may feel scared. They don't like change. I think it's kind of a mixture of all three of those things. But how are you prepared to deal with that head on? Because I assume it's only going to be a lot harder, and that bullying will be even stronger when you go head to head with somebody like Joni Ernst.
Yeah, no, look, that's certainly true, Chris. And look, anytime you're different or just have a different life experience, it definitely puts a target on your back. No doubt about it. I think the good news for me is that I've got a pretty thick skin. I've been through quite a lot, both from my own childhood, but then certainly doing the advocacy work that I did for several years before running for the Iowa legislature in 2018, and now obviously running for statewide office. Look, this is definitely, politics is tough, and I mean, but life is tough, right? I mean, I think so many people in our state can connect to the feeling of of facing struggle, facing whether you bullying, what have you. And so I don't think that's a unique experience in any way. I think the important thing is that in politics, it can often feel so negative or overwhelming at times that people want to pull back or turn inward and just not engage at all because they're, I think, understandably frustrated with how things are going. And I think the challenge for those of us who are in elected office and in leadership positions is to use those platforms in a way to try to inspire people to get involved, to come together. I will tell you one thing that we're doing on this campaign is that we're trying to be very intentional about proactive outreach across the political spectrum. We have a Democratic primary first coming up in June, but from the very beginning of this campaign, we have been focused on trying to build a new coalition of Iowans that spans the political spectrum, reaching out. I want to bring new people into the Democratic Party, and I want to extend an open hand to independents and to Republicans who, if they are looking at what's happening in Washington, D.C., and they think that Senator Ernst is no longer representing their interests and they want a new voice, a new generation of leadership in our state, that they're welcome on this campaign. And I think that message has been very positively received. We're continuing to travel across the state, but just last week we were in North Iowa, up in a small town in Bellman, over in Wright County, meeting with, again, it was a bipartisan group, Republicans, Democrats, independents who were there. It's the same thing over in Osage, up in Mitchell County. And the reception to that message was very, very positive, because I think people understand these are serious topics, and the kind of treatment that Senator Ernst gave us that you saw on full display in those intro videos is just not something that people want to see in their politics right now.
Zach, in the prep just before we started to shoot tape, David was telling us that he'd ridden the first 2 days of Ragbri. And so as we're talking about Northern Iowa, and they're going to dip their toes into Minnesota shortly, but right outside my office here in Urbandale, it is like we are on the set of Predator. It is hot. It is humid. It is dangerous to human health. I just saw Senator Rob Hogue in Cedar Rapids posted that they're going to be 2.5 degrees warmer than they've ever been in July. And so the heat is on, the humidity is on, and we have a senator who wants to play sarcastic games with her apologies. But what she should be apologizing for, at least to my way of thinking, is her complete failure to do anything about the atmosphere or even the waters in the state of Iowa. How will you bring a different message to this campaign?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, a couple of things. First and foremost, Senator Hogue and I served together in the legislature, and he and I actually worked together before I was in elected office. When I was in college, I did some work together when he was writing his book and traveling across the state talking about some of these issues. And think like a lot of people of my generation, learned about climate change when we were in high school, and the concerns about what would happen over time. And sure enough, a lot of those concerns certainly have come true. I think the good news is that we've also exceeded some of the rosiest projections when it comes to deploying renewable energy. The obviously wind has always, I mean, not always, but for the last several decades has been an enormously important part of Iowa's energy portfolio. And now you're starting to really see scaling up of solar and other things. You're seeing, I think, exciting developments happening on battery technology and those kinds of things. And so I think that even though the challenges of a changing climate are certainly real, and we see them, and experience them basically every day at this point in some way or another. I think the exciting thing to me is that a lot of the solutions are also scaling faster than I think people were expecting. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges here is that we live in a global world, and there are certainly other states, and by states I mean other countries, that are making good progress, and some that aren't making as much progress as we would like to see. I think here in Iowa, one of the things that really struck me when Senator Ernst voted for the bill, or the big beautiful bill, was that there were changes to the energy investments, clean energy investments that had been made as a part of the Inflation Reduction Act that were going to be very beneficial in our state. Things that would have helped bring down energy costs for Iowans. And unfortunately, it's funny, actually. I mean, it's not funny, it's actually quite sad. It's strange, would have been the better word. I think Senator Ernst introduced an amendment to that bill that would have protected some of those clean energy amendments. But Senator Ernst couldn't even get a vote for that bill on the floor. And then she wound up voting in favor of the legislation anyway, right? So she had this leverage that she could have used. She had an amendment that she wanted to introduce, but then she wasn't willing to actually go to the mat for her constituents, and she wound up voting for this awful piece of legislation. And so I think, again, that is a good illustration that not only has Senator Ernst become so focused on her internal party politics and her status within her party, that she is not willing to use the leverage that she has to actually make good policy for Iowa. And so, look, I think a lot of those things are going to mean making sure that we are trying to bring back some of those investments, that we can lower energy costs for Iowans, that we can expand our investment in these projects that are going to be an important part of meeting future energy demand. I'm sure we're all aware of some of the growing demands for electricity that are being driven by the proliferation of these data centers. And those are things that we need to take seriously in order to make the kind of the right decisions for the future.
I mean, before Channing, you follow up. I mean, I think what is important for people to understand is that renewable really is competitive when it comes to how much you're paying per hour, right? Per megawatt hour. But also when you look at how big each job sector is, coal, which they're now really pushing hard, employs 40,000 people in the United States. Meanwhile, there are 3.5 million renewable energy jobs.
Yep.
So I don't know really who they're trying to help. And a lot of those renewable energy jobs are right there in Iowa. And I've sung that success story about moving from Boston to a house double the size in Iowa. And our utility bill was a fraction of the cost because it was wind.
Yep. Yeah, Chris, I mean, a few points on that. First, the North America Building Trades Union, NAB2, put out a report, this is a few weeks ago now, that said that the Big Beautiful Bill, by their estimate, is going to cost somewhere around 1.75 million jobs, which is going to have obviously a very negative impact at a fragile moment for our economy. It's going to end investments in things that also help lower energy costs. So, for example, my wife and I in February, our furnace went out. Bad time of year to have your furnace go out in this great state. We were thankfully able to get a heat pump installed relatively quickly. And that heat pump, for us, penciled out more quickly than it otherwise would have, because of the fact that the IRA has had a tax credit in it that would help subsidize the cost of deploying that, which costs a little bit more on the front end, but saves you a significant amount of energy and money over time, and that becomes more affordable, and that project pencils out faster because of those tax credits. And so to take those away, to end on investments that are both good for people's household budgets as well as good for the environment, good for energy demand, right? I mean, to me, that was just such a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say thanks to David for letting me squeeze in. But I just want to tell you, her sarcasm in the apology just pisses me off. And then what she does with the Big Beautiful Bill, she is working to harm the interests of the people of Iowa after 2 terms of doing nothing to protect the interests of the people of Iowa. And I'm damn mad, and I'm not going to take it anymore. What do you think, Zach?
No,
I need
Channing,
a therapist.
I'm right there with you. And look,
Hey.
the one thing that I would say is, when she first ran in 2014, Senator Ernst made a promise. She said she would only serve 12 years, 2 terms. And, now she's gearing up to run for a 3rd term. I know there's some speculation out there. I saw a story a week or 2 ago that maybe she's going to retire instead of running for a 3rd term. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. I've seen she's also hired a campaign manager already. We're very much preparing and planning to run against Senator Ernst. What I will tell you is I think that is exactly the kind of behavior that Iowans, no matter what party you belong to, are frustrated and fed up with. I think that it's really noticeable that when you look at who actually voted against the Big Beautiful Bill, you can see someone like Senator Tom Tillis, who, after deciding that he would not seek re-election, was willing to vote his conscience. And I know that not everybody in the Democratic Party supports term limits. I personally was not a huge term limits guy when I was first elected, but I've really come to believe that they are an important tool in both rotating the crops and just bringing in new ideas, new voices. But there's also something to be said for, to some extent, changing the incentives that elected officials have when it comes to how they approach their reelections, and how that then shows up in their votes, because that is a real change. And so, for me, I've always thought that it's important for us to have trust in government. I think that term limits are a part of that. I think banning, insider stock trading is a part of that. I've introduced legislation on both of those topics in the state legislature, and that's certainly something that I would continue to support in the U.S. Senate.
Yes, I want to go back to something you talked about just kind of briefly and a little more in detail, and that's that Iowa creates 63% of the electricity through wind generation in the state. According to Yale Climate, over 70% of Iowans support clean energy projects in the state in a bipartisan fashion.
Yep.
We have one old Iowa senator who used to call himself the father of wind energy in the state of Iowa. And now both of our GOP senators have decided to phase out tax credits for clean energy in the state of Iowa. So it seems like this is low-hanging fruit that's sitting there for you to grab the mantle and run with it. It's popular. It's great for business because we have these data centers in Iowa. We've got Google, Meta, all the big players, Apple, who have invested here because of clean energy. It seems like it's good business. It's good for the climate, and Democrats should run hard on this. And I'm just wondering if you'll grab that mantle and run with the clean energy issue.
Yeah, David, absolutely. Look, I think that these investments are important for a multitude of reasons. One, you're investing in new, as Chris mentioned earlier, affordable sources of energy that, when you look at bringing new generation online, are very competitive with what is, the kind of other, fossil fuels, what have you, that we've used in the past. And in fact, in most cases, it is better for, the bottom line for the folks who are building these projects. They're good. You don't have to have the fuel costs. Obviously, the wind and the sun don't cost you anything. And so you're able to actually bring down the cost that households are paying for, their utility bills. And then finally, to your point, it is absolutely something that attracts economic investment for our state. I've always been a leader on this for a long time, as all three of you, and I'm sure all of your viewers know. And I think it's something that will continue to be an important part of our future. I do think that, most Iowans who I am talking with today across the state are more focused on the cost element of the benefits of these clean energy investments than they are on some of the environmental ones. I care about both. But I do think that you are seeing rising costs that are being driven by changes in our climate. And by the way, it's not just on energy and the fact that you're now ending some of these credits and investments. It's also the fact that insurance costs are skyrocketing all over our state. When I was up in North Iowa last week, I kept hearing about that. I've seen it in my own life. Our homeowners insurance policy almost doubled when it was renewed the other year. And we were, in some respects, fortunate that our policy was renewed at all, because I've also heard from tons of Iowans who have had their policies canceled, as you've seen some real changes in the insurance market that are being driven by a lot of these things. And so I think that this idea that the effects of climate change are off in the future, or they're distant, or they're going to be coming, I think it's self-evidently wrong if you are someone who is currently a homeowner or paying, property insurance, property casualty insurance, what have you. So from my perspective, I just think this is absolutely an issue that we have opportunity to go to Iowans and say, look, we have a different vision for the future of our state. Our vision as a state our vision for Iowa is a state where clean energy is an important and growing part of our energy mix. It is a state where you can generate an abundance of electricity without having to worry about poisoning our air or hurting our climate. I think all of those things should be, things that we could. I think Democrats have been pretty closely associated with investments in clean energy in the past. And I do think that we need to continue to talk about those things and also just tie it directly into people's personal and day-to-day, household lives and budgets, as well as talking about the impacts on future generations.
Senator Wahls, what is, 2026, there's a lot on the line, and there's the small chance that Democrats could win back both the House and the Senate, which would be, obviously great and for the purpose of this podcast, especially for climate action. But, if Iowa's going to be one of those states that flips, What makes you the best candidate out of the ones that are going for that Democrat nominee for Iowa senator or senator from Iowa?
Yeah. Yep. Well, so look, we already got several folks who are in the race, and my expectation is that you'll see several more get into the race. And I think that is a reflection of two things. I mean, I think the first one is there's so much energy and excitement on the ground. Some of your viewers may know that there's currently a special election scheduled up in Sioux City to replace the seat that was left vacant by the death of my former colleague, Rocky DeWitt. We have a terrific candidate who's running up there, Caitlin Dre. We've been supporting her campaign and are very excited about her candidacy. I think that she would be a wonderful state lawmaker if she wins. She's running against somebody who is a total right-wing conspiracy theorist, and I'm not sure what his position is on climate change, but I can't imagine it's a good one. So there are concrete things that are happening here in our state that are exciting. Additionally, to the point of the introductory videos earlier, Senator Ernst is vulnerable. I think people know that, and so there's a lot of interest in this seat and in this race. I think I'm the strongest candidate for a couple of reasons. First of all, I have been able to start building out the statewide operation. We're reaching out to folks from all 99 counties. That has been something that's been very important to us. I don't think that you can win this seat unless you are proactively reaching out across the state of Iowa. You have to do that, as you're seeing on the website here that you're scrolling through. I do think that there's a lot of hunger and excitement for a new generation of leadership. When I'm talking with folks here in Iowa, across the state, there are not very many people who are happy with what's going on out in Washington, D.C. And so I think being willing to say, look, I have a track record of actually being willing to stand up to the Democratic establishment when I have had disagreements, and I've had strong disagreements in the past, and I'm sure that there will be plenty to continue to talk about in the future. But my constituents have always been able to trust that no matter whether that has meant standing up to fight for democratic values and standing up to Republicans, or having difficult conversations within our own party about where we need to do better, that I have a track record of doing that. And that's something that I'm certainly, I think, is a big advantage for me in the campaign. And I'm really the only person who has a track record of being willing to do that. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the U.S. Senate, whether that means Chuck Schumer, John Thune, Donald Trump. I'm willing to fight with anybody if it means putting Iowa first. I'm willing to work with anybody if that means putting Iowa first.
Zach, I know it takes hard work. It takes time away from your family, especially a beautiful 16 months. Oh my goodness, that's perfect. Give us a little preview. Can he say no yet?
Look, he definitely has some strong opinions. He can't always vocalize them. Okay. But it's a fun age, and he's been walking for a few months now. He's starting to be able to run a little bit. We're certainly getting our steps in every day. I'll say that.
I'll let you introduce your website, but
sure.
I just want to say to everybody, it's Zach with an H and WAHLS.
That's right.
So Zach Wahls, but Chris, put the big graphic back up again about his site, the one with his wife and child. But Zach, tell us how people can support you and where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to learn more is on the website there, zachwahls.com. You can go there. We've got a ton of information about myself, the campaign, ways to get involved, our campaign values. You've got an opportunity to sign up to help volunteer. With the first big task for any campaign running statewide is getting the early resources that you need to be able to build out a team and hire the organizers and travel across the state, all of those things. And then the second big piece is making sure that you have the ability to get on the ballot by collecting petition signatures. You need to collect 3,500 signatures from across Iowa and 100 signatures from 19 different counties. And so if folks are interested in helping out with that, filling out that volunteer tab is a great way to do it. And then we can help reach out to you to help you get connected to other supporters of the campaign in your community and help us get on the ballot. But I'd say at this moment, anyone who's been excited about what they've heard today, if you'd be willing to consider making a contribution, that would be a big help. We are not taking any corporate PAC money, unlike Joni Ernst. We are a 100% people-powered campaign. And so we really are depending on the generous support of people like you all over Iowa.
State Senator Zach Wahls, running for U.S. Senator representing the state of Iowa. We wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks for all of you for listening to the 3 Degrees podcast. For Channing Dutton, David Thorson, I'm Chris Gloninger. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.